Alrighty. Hey, everybody. Sorry we haven't done this in a little while. My name is Carl. I'm the founder of Swim Smart, and we do these talks every once in a while from the book, The Biology of Swimming. And I know that some people have finished with their like end of season meet, so maybe I should next time I'll do this like a week earlier. But for a lot of like club teams and high school teams, we are coming up to the big meet and we're either in taper or starting it. And I like to give this talk to kind of debunk some mysteries or at least give some clarity about taper. I've heard from a lot of coaches that this is like the popular chapter in the book. It like really opens things up for their swimmers to understand what's happening, and then they don't worry quite as much about what's going on with their body. Like we're going to talk about like what is taper, the taper blues, and how we end up swimming faster. So let me get this PowerPoint started. Sorry, my hair is all kind of crazy today, but hopefully, all right, I gotta switch this around and close this. All right, we have some live listeners. Thanks for joining. If you guys have questions, I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat. And if I don't clarify something well or you have a question, please let me know. Happy to answer. So, as we said, we're going to kind of go day by day, like what happens during taper when you first start, what happens in the first few days, the next few days, the last couple days. A little bit different types of taper, short stuff, long stuff, a drop, a gradual things, and then we'll talk a little bit about what not to do. That's almost as important as knowing what to do during taper is knowing what not to do. Okay. So let's start in the day by day changes. So what's the difference between like in-season training and like your taper training, right? So in season, especially for our like high school and above athletes, you're looking at 9 workouts a week, 6 to 8,000 yards a day. High level pace sets, hundreds on 2 minutes, holding, a lot of volume, a lot of intensity. When taper comes around, what do we want to think about? What happens for most of us coaches? I'm not telling you what to do, but just trying to illustrate like the difference between in season and taper training. So a lot less workouts instead of 9, maybe we do 5, a lot less yards. And I think this is probably the most important, and I think we'll talk about this again, is that you want to decrease the volume, but you don't want to decrease the intensity. And there's been research studies that show the difference in how the body performs under those two circumstances, okay? And the whole goal with the taper is that in season here, you're beating up the body quite a bit, right? So you're almost always in a rebuilding phase. So if you saw our nutrition chapter, the nutrition, we talk about rebuilding, refueling, and rehydrating, right? And so you're constantly in this cycle of breakdown, build up, breakdown, build up. Taper, obviously you're not breaking down quite as much. And so the hope is that the build up will overcompensate and your muscles will be more put together, you'll be more hydrated, you'll have more fuel for the fire. We'll talk about that definitely in depth because it relates to the taper blues. And so all of that leads to you swimming faster, right? So we're trying to get this over recovery and this overshoot at least while the window is open, right? At the same time, in the background, your body's kind of deconditioning, right? You're getting out of shape slowly during taper, and eventually that will catch up to performance, but we're trying to hit this window where you're still in pretty good shape and your performance is still good. Which I'm sure like this is all stuff but just to reiterate, what at least take it to the pool deck and tell your swimmers like this is the goal, this is what we're trying to do. That way they understand the mechanics behind what they're doing, right? It's not just a psychological thing, it's a biological thing. Okay, probably the most important thing to realize, day 1 to 3. So if we take taper day by day, glycogen regeneration. Glycogen is the sugar in your muscles. So it's the fuel, the primary fuel for muscles that it likes. And a lot of time during the season, your training is very high, right here, and you're using a lot of that sugar up almost all the time. So your sugar stores are very low for most of the season. Once we get to taper, this kind of reverses, right? Your training volume goes down, and your sugar stores go up. So some people have measured this up to 35% higher. So imagine your body's a car and it's like always running and the gas tank is always low, and then you start running the car a little bit less and the gas tank starts to fill up, right? So this is what happens almost like in the first few days. So it only takes a couple days for this to occur and it happens very quickly. Well, this leads us to the taper blues. So if you've ever had swimmers, I'm sure we all have had this experience. You start taper and you expect things to get better right away, right? You expect to have more energy, you expect to be able to swim faster, swim easier, all this stuff. And instead the opposite happens, right? You feel really tight, your muscles feel kind of soggy and heavy, and your times, like you're doing pace sets in practice and your times are way off, they're way slower. A lot of swimmers really get distressed at this point. So this is, I don't know if this is a scientific like proven fact, but this is what I imagine is happening. So the key thing is that sugar is very wet and heavy. So glycogen is sugar. So those terms, at least for us, are essentially interchangeable. And 1 gram of sugar comes with 3 grams of water. Okay, so it comes with a ton of water. That's why the body doesn't like to store sugar in large quantities. That's why it prefers to store things as fat, because fat does not come with water. But sugar is very sticky, and you get all this water. So if you imagine in season, this is a muscle cell, and there's not a lot of sugar, these green specks, and so there's not a lot of water, okay? And it's chronically like this for the whole season, right? Because we're just burning sugar, burning, and it never builds up. But then taper starts, and all of a sudden, there's a whole lot more sugar, and with the sugar comes 3 times as much water. And that kind of waterlogs and swells up the muscle, so it feels horrible. So number one, it waterlogs the muscle and it swells up, and the muscle's really not used to that, so it doesn't like that. Number two, the other thing is that your muscles, imagine sugar and energy as like a chemical reaction. So maybe I'll try to write this out with my mouse handwriting. So if you put sugar turns into fuel, or like energy, we'll make a star be our energy, right? But then you also get acid as a byproduct, right? If you remember from our energy system talk, we go through this in way more detail, but we'll keep it simple here. Sugar turns into energy and acid, right? And the acid gets kicked out, various mechanisms. Okay, great. So what happens if you increase all the amount of sugar in your muscles? Well, now you can generate a lot more energy, which is good, which is what we want, but you're also generating a lot more acid. And your body may not be quite ready to deal with that. And so that's why performance might go down slightly. But here's the key that I want you to take with you and tell all your swimmers, that this is all very temporary, right? This is an indication that you have trained well and that your muscles are well trained. And over time, everything adapts to changes. So you might have the taper blues for a few days as your muscles are kind of swollen and thick, and that's causing a lot of acid and hydrogen to be pumped out. But after a few days, your muscles will recalibrate, and your mitochondria will recalibrate, and your buffering will recalibrate, and all of these will start to normalize. And this is when the real taper really kicks in, is after you get past this temporary time. Now, not everybody gets the taper blues. Some people are definitely more prone to it than others. So, for instance, if you're a guy, if you're male, whoops, I can't spell. How do you spell M? Here we go. If you're a male, if you're a sprinter, if you have a lot of muscle mass, right, this is going to affect you more than it affects like a little teenage girl that weighs 100 pounds when she's soaking wet. The reason for that is because big men don't have quite as much turnover. They can't adapt as fast, and this is of course occurring at a much higher rate, a much higher level in their muscles, and so they get to feel it more. And that's typically why big men sprinters need a little bit more rest than little girl distance swimmers, right? Those are your kind of extremes. just to give you a framework in your mind of how you want to conduct your taper. Like maybe you do taper, it works well for some swimmers, it works bad for other swimmers. This might be the reason behind it. So then you can adjust your plan in the season that comes after that. So we're deeper into taper, 7 to 10 days, and this all becomes about muscle repair. So the muscles in season get really damaged. Now, I've kind of, this looks like a messy picture because that's kind of what is happening in your body. When you work out, the feeling of soreness is your muscles being broken down. Now, obviously, not all of your muscles are broken down at the same time, but you have, 5%, 10% of your muscles are going to be broken. And you've got all these inflammation and oxidation things that are going on. So histamine is a local chemical that attracts white blood cells, and the white blood cells, they're kind of garbage men. They chew up the broken down pieces. With the white blood cells, you get this edema, which is water that infiltrates. You get these oxygen radicals. So there's a lot going on when the muscle's broken down and it's constantly getting repaired. It's this kind of cycle, another cycle that we go through, and it's totally normal. But these muscles are not going to operate, right? These muscles are not going to cause contraction. They're not going to bring bones together, and they're not going to help you with performance. But as the training level goes down and we start hitting our later time period in taper, these muscles get repaired. You see now they're nice and clean and straight, and there's no white blood cells, there's no edema. So now you have 5-10% more muscle fibers that are actually working and functioning, and so that's how you go faster. Now you actually have more muscle that's available to do work, and so that happens a little bit later down the road, 7 to 10 days around. Okay, so 10 plus days, we, especially with higher end swimmers, I want to kind of separate, this taper talk is more for your high school and above and college swimmers. Age groupers, at least me as a coach, we don't really taper, right? They're little, they recover essentially within 24 to 48 hours. If anything, we just do a couple more sprints than usual, work on turns, work on dives, and then we just let them go. Like, we don't change intensity, we don't change volume all that much. For your bigger swimmers, more and more, the science, the studies show that they will continue to improve even after day 10 up to day 14. Some Olympic swimmers can push it out to the 20-day mark, and we really don't know exactly why that is. Why do they keep getting better? Like, biologically, we've kind of fixed all the muscles, we've fueled them up. Like, what's left to improve? But they have done the studies, and they've shown that yes, there is an improvement for whatever reason, and some of these improvements you can take back to your pool deck and teach your swimmers. So lactate levels at maximum speeds decreases. Lactate levels decrease 13% at maximum speeds, 30% at submaximum. So if you're doing the 50 or the 100, you have less acid production. So for some reason, your mitochondria are working better, your muscles are being more efficient, you're exporting the acid out of your muscles better. And at submaximum speed, so this is like 200 and above, you're even the same effect, even bigger, is happening, right? So this is just a measure that we're swimming at the same speed but more efficiently. Or another way, you can swim faster with the same lactate levels. VO2 and heart rate go down when swimming at submaximum speeds, right? So if you're swimming the 500 in season and your heart rate's at 190 and you're doing it in 5 minutes, well, if you did the same 500 in taper, in 5 minutes, your heart rate would be like 185, 180, right? So that means that you're able to do the same performance with less effort, or you could do a higher performance with the same effort. Swimming power increases, the slow fibers contract faster, the fast fibers contract faster. You get all these continuous changes over the 10 plus day period. Your blood volume, and so what? How would I explain all of this? Like, why is this happening in the body? I suspect it's probably something hormonal. So during in-season training, your cortisol or your stress hormone levels are going to be kind of on the high end a lot, because they're constantly trying to rebuild things. They're constantly trying to provide sugar and glucose and glycogen for the high level of intense training. When your training goes down, your cortisol levels will go down too. And so your body can, cortisol has negative effects, right? So when it's high, it's breaking something down to provide for something else. And when cortisol goes down, you no longer have the breaking down signal. And so things can kind of improve. That's my theory. I don't know if I have proof for that. But it takes a bit of time for all of this to kick in. So that's why swimmers can continue to get faster pretty deep in the taper, even though you would expect them to kind of get out of shape by that time. Okay. All right, let's take a little hiatus and talk about shaving, right? We all kind of shave for taper, and we instinctively like know and see that it makes us faster. Obviously, we suspect it's because of less drag, right? So, and I just wanted to point out a couple science experiments that they did. So they did a push and glide test, one with an unshaved and one with shaved. So all you did was you pushed off the wall in a streamline and they measured the drag. And so there was actually a drag difference. And this is all intuitive. I'm not telling you anything new. If you want a number to put on there, you can say, oh, your drag goes down by 12%. Is that a real number? I don't know. It goes down a little bit. But one thing that I think most of us don't think about when we shave is actually grip on the water. So a lot of swimmers, and this might be a reason to shave maybe a little earlier, like at the beginning of taper, to get used to this new feeling. And this is what I mean by that. When you're unshaved and you have a lot of these hairs and a lot of surface area, when your arm enters the water, oh, is there a way I can zoom in? Magnify the slide. Let's magnify. Okay, here we go. So when your arm comes into the water, the hairs kind of grip and pull a lot of air slash bubbles into the water. And so that creates a layer of air between your arm and the water. And that's not quite as grippy, right? When we're pulling ourselves through the water, we want to be in contact with the water. And that's what we push behind us, which propels us forward. And if we have a lot of bubbles, that interferes with that mechanism at the interface. When you shave, you no longer pull in quite as many bubbles, and you get good contact with the water, and you can actually have more grip. So shaving is not just about less drag, it is also about more grip. And this difference in your ability to contact the water, this might change like your stroke, and it might change your race strategy to a degree. It might change your distance per stroke. So just to give you guys kind of a nugget to think about, it might be worthwhile to investigate or test shaving earlier, right before, like not the day before you race, but maybe a month before or 2 weeks before. That way you get used to the new body, the new shaved, tapered swimming machine, and then it can perform at its kind of maximum level. Alrighty, great. So this will be a quick talk. I think we're almost to the end here. Types of taper. So again, this is intuitive that we all know this, but I want to put some numbers behind it and some experimentation. So there's always this, at least back in the day, there used to be this big question of how do we taper? Do we lower intensity or do we lower volume? And they did this experiment in the track world. So they put one group where they took down volume and they did not change intensity. So they decreased how many miles or how many repetitions of sprints they were doing, but they kept the intensity the same. So they wanted the athletes to keep going as fast as they could, but they would just do it less times. Am I mixing this up? I think I'm mixing this up. Other way around. So I was talking about this where they put the volume down and they trained intensity. This group one was no intensity, so they did not do any sprints. They only decreased the volume a little bit. Group two was our intensity group, so they decreased the volume 90% and they only did sprints. The lower volume people did not do any better than the control, so they didn't do any better than the people who were just went from in season to racing. and the taper group, the decrease intensity group, improved 2 to 3%, and that's a reasonable number, right? That's kind of what we look for in our high-end athletes at the end of the season. If they improve somewhere around the 2% mark, that means you had a very successful season, successful taper. That's exactly what we want to do. So this science experiment, and you can test this in your pool deck, like decreasing volume but maintaining intensity is a better way to taper than the other way around. So to give some numbers and put this in a real world setting. So let's say in season your swimmers do a typical workout, a high intensity workout is 2100s on 2 minutes. They have to hold 60 seconds. Okay. So we want to decrease the volume. So this here to the left, we're going to do 1050s on a minute, holding a little bit faster than that 100 pace. What we don't want to do is do 100, 10 100s easy on the 130, right? So this will not work well. This will work much better. And you want to, again, explain this to your swimmers, right? They're not going to understand intuitively that this works and that it's been experimented. You as a coach, as the educator, you want to tell your swimmers, you want to tell your parents, like, hey, taper doesn't mean that we just sit around and watch TV and eat potato chips. It means that we keep going fast, if not faster, just doing it less times, okay? That's what works the best. You know, obviously we can't do a full 14-day taper for every swim meet. Otherwise we'd call that a master swimmer who is always on taper. So mid-season meets, you know, if you're going to do a little bit of, if you want to have like a little bit of swimming fast, you can do a short taper, right? You do that 3-day, 5-day, maybe up to 7 days if it's like a mid-season meet that, you know, a big invite that we want to swim well to. So we're taking advantage of the glycogen coming back. We're taking advantage of the muscles getting repaired, but that's about it, right? We're not taking advantage of what I theorize is the hormone changes later in taper. So people sometimes they call it a drop taper, something for your like mid-season meet. Your major taper is going to be that full 10 to 14 day setup, right? And the reason we don't do the major taper, and I mentioned it earlier, is that behind the scenes, your muscles, your heart, your lungs, your capillaries, they're all starting to degrade, right? So your mitochondria, they're all kind of dwindling down. And so you're slowly going out of shape, but you're just trying to hit this window just right so that you're in shape and most recovered as possible, right? So the rule of thumb is it takes about 2 weeks to open this window here, and then you get your swim meet in, or a couple meets maybe if you need to extend it, and it maybe stays open for another 2 weeks. So you have about a month, 1 day to 30 days to get the full taper, and the effects of taper last another 2 weeks, okay? After that, you should start to see like pretty significant decline in performance, right? So this is not going to last forever. You can't taper forever. There's always, you know, I'll give credit to Ernie McGlisco and his book Swimming Fastest. I think I have it somewhere in this room. You know, he described that you don't want to, you know, for minor tapers, you just drop them, right? So you go from doing your 2100s on 2 minutes to doing 5 or 3 just for a couple days. You know, keep intensity, drop volume. This blue line is volume. Drop the volume a huge amount, and then, but for your major taper, it's been shown that it's a little better to do it gradually. So maybe day 1 you do 18 100s, then 16, then 14, then, or you know how, and just numbers to illustrate the point. But you don't want to drop it and then hold it low for the whole 2 week period, right? So this is only day 5 out here maximum, right? This is day 14 out here. So if you're going to do a longer taper, that major taper, you want to drop the volume gradually throughout the 2 weeks. If you're going to rest for a small mid-season invite, drop it fast for a couple days, and then go race and try to go fast. All right, last slide here. What not to do for the taper. This is probably the most important because all swimmers, when it becomes down to crunch time, they start to think about all the things they didn't work on, all the things that they want to improve, and now all of a sudden they want to do a ton of new things. And that's definitely what you do not want to do during taper. You don't want to try new techniques, right? You don't want to change breathing patterns. You don't want to change tempos, distance per strokes. You want to maintain or, just slightly improve what you've been working on all season. No new equipment. So if you haven't been using fins all season, don't throw the fins in right at the end, right? Because your body needs time to adapt to these things. And if it's novel to it, if it's new, it's going to get sore and broken down way more than if it's used to something that it's been using all season. You don't do new dry land. This includes stretching. Okay, so if you've been stretching all season and your body is used to that, okay, keep it up, keep the stretching, how you do it. Same thing, but decrease the intensity, decrease the how long you're holding your different stretches for. But if you're not a stretcher all season, now is not the time for that, right? You don't want to start that because stretching to a degree damages the muscles, right? It lengthens things out, and if your muscles are not used to it, you're going to get sore and you're going to swim slow. Don't overdo dives and turns, right? Just same as all these other things that we're saying before. Don't bring in the novel stuff. Oh, I do say no stretching. Okay, great. What else do I want to mention? I think that's about it. Whoops. So, again, short activity today about taper. Hopefully it gives you some ideas to take with you to the pool deck. If you want these ideas in like a real physical form, we've got these books for you guys. Webinar 20 for 20% off. So you go to, where's my website here? swimsmarttoday.com. And if you go to the bookstore, you can find a lot of our books, some of our partner books here. For a lot of the talks that we've been doing, we're trying to gear towards, the science, the exercise science and the biology swimming is kind of where we have most of that. If you're looking for more like coaching ideas and how to teach strokes, how to write workouts, how to build a team, how to educate parents, Swim Coach's Starter Guide. And for your swimmers, if you have new swimmers, the starter guide for them, nutrition guide for them. So lots of stuff going on, and we want you to take advantage, be a professional expert coach when you're on deck, have all the answers for people, and hopefully you get some value out of this. It wasn't a waste of time. If you thought it was good, give us a thumbs up, share, feel free to take this to your swimmers. They can watch it themselves and learn themselves. But otherwise, we'll try to be back for the new season. I think the next one I want to do is how training affects the biology. So we're going to go through every kind of mode of training, sprinting, endurance, a couple versions of that, and then how it affects your biology at the cellular level. That way you can explain it to your swimmers like in detail. When you write a set like A, B, and C up, this is what it's going to happen. This is what it's going to do in your body over the set, right? So the swimmers, we want to build trust and get you looking good in front of them. All right, I'm going to stop talking. Thanks. If you guys have any questions, you can always email me, sales@swimsmarttoday.com, or just in the on the website. If you hit the chat feature, this will come to me. All right, we'll see you guys next time.